All right, welcome back. Going right back into it again. Nothing's changed since I added those cameras. Um, but now, like as you're starting, I hope what you're taking away from this is like, oh, I could really build almost kind of like a control interface for this kind of stuff. Like I'm doing different kind of the mouth opening and closing, different facial expressions. I'm controlling cameras. This is that kind of like virtual production performance. This is the performative aspect of this class in some ways, but you're starting to kind of think in like a production kind of mode where you have control over things. And honestly, this keyboard interface is not the greatest interface. Like I wouldn't run a whole show from my keyboard necessarily. And there's lots of solutions. Like eventually, a MIDI pad is kind of one of the biggest ones. Usually, you kind of see. I'm not going to be showing you specifically how to do that, just to show you like a MIDI controller kind of thing. I'm sure we can find some good ones here on Google. Something like this. With its pads and knobs and like that. This is also another one. Like this is probably the quintessential in some cases. You got sliders, you got knob buttons and all that. Like that would be a lot more interesting to hook up all this stuff to in some ways. But rather than hooking it, like Unreal Engine, I think you could get MIDI input into it. You could get Arduino input. You could get these things like. Honestly, it's just a lot to code inside of Unreal Engine. So what I want to show you right in this video is something called OSC. And I guess I should actually explain OSC a little bit more than I maybe was planning to. OSC is not a government. I guess it is a government, but what OSC is a data protocol. Oh boy. I have my keyboard right behind my microphone, so sometimes it's hard to see. And OSC stands for Open Sound Control. It has nothing to do with sound. Get that out of your head, even though that's when it did originally start as basically like a localized network way of sending data and information between things. And people originally thought it would be used in like music studios, so you could almost kind of like have like a wireless network system of all the things like communicating with each other. Eventually, that was not what it was used, and it just kind of became its own thing, and it's become a huge tool in the kind of creative coding community. And essentially, if you're asking yourself, why would I use OSC or when would I use OSC? The answer is whenever you want to send information or data from one application to another application, or one coding language to another coding language. And doing it in a way that can be wireless, but is within a local area network. So this is not a internet kind of situation. This isn't taking like, making a web page, getting web sockets and web hooks and stuff, and like anyone from anywhere in the world could control this. You could do that. But this is kind of for you, like internally in your own one computer, or even just on like a router you set up. It doesn't even need to be on the internet, just a network of sending data from one computer to another, one application from another. Why do I like this? Because it's really somewhat simple to hook up things in Unreal to receive data from other places. And those other places can be a lot faster to prototype in, or have like more responsive kind of fun tools. And what I'm going to use to demonstrate this is MaxMSP. Now, I apologize if you haven't used MaxMSP, because this may lead things to feel a little bit like unattainable. But I hope what you take from it, I'm going to try and keep the Max side really simple. I hope what you take from it, if you're not adept in Max, is that you can send data to Unreal Engine, and you'll see how it's set up on the Unreal Engine side, and like why you would want to. So for those of you who don't know, MaxMSP is a Max patch. It's a node-based programming language. I use a lot of my other work kind of in it, and it lets you create objects like random and it has interface kind of objects like a button, and you can type in like an argument like random 10, and then you can grab like an integer box, hook that up, lock it all, and when I click on the button I get a random number. Like, again, I'm not trying to like teach you Max necessarily in this video, but what I'm getting at is things like Max are a lot faster for just like prototyping things and also creating like buttons. And like, actually, if I want to show you where this kind of could go, is I can make an object called a slider, and now I have like a slider tool, or I could make an object called a dial, and now I have like a dial tool. And you can imagine where it's like, oh man, if I could, these are spitting out some values, like numbers that maybe I could like scale them or map them. And what if I could use these to control the camera rotation in Unreal Engine, or every time I click this, the mouth opens, so that's what I'm trying to get at long term with all this is, how do you do something outside of Unreal Engine using OSC to control it that gives you more like creative, like kind of input and faster input? So we'll get to the Max side in a second, but I just wanted to introduce that a little bit right there. So let's get back to the bread and butter here, Unreal Engine. Now, OSC is something we have to go to our plugins. You don't have to install this anywhere else, but in your plugins, you should come to OSC, and you can see this as Open Sound Control. I need to enable it. Don't pay attention to this one, just this one. It's very simple. Enable, and this will cause you to have to restart. That's all right. Save if you have to. Pop up in a second here, and we're back. So now that all that I've done by enabling it is now when I type in kind of like in my blueprints, OSC, the whole library of OSC stuff will be visible and usable. So where do I want to put this OSC stuff? Basically in any blueprint that you're using. So let's go back to, I'm actually going to duplicate my VP virtual character keyboard. And actually I'm realizing because I restarted, the scaling got off. So let me just do that really quick. 1.4. Well, everything's a little bit bigger so you can see it now. And this lighting thing's frustrating me. I'm going to do the usual thing where I say build lighting only. Well, I just wanted to get rid of that. So I was in my avatar folder. I got my blueprint virtual character. Let's do blueprint. I just duplicated it. Blueprint virtual character OSC. And I did not realize that was out there. So all that I'm looking to do is keep these morph targets, kind of like I was doing, and maybe in some cases get rid of the timeline or just get rid of the key press right here. And I want to create something in Max that lets me kind of do this stuff as I was saying. So what I need to do is I need to create an OSC server. I need a way for OSC to be listening. Now, and I should have started with this. OSC is not something you install. It's not a software. There's no hub. You're not trying to download OSC. OSC exists in two places: the place you're sending from and the place you're receiving from. It's a lot like a kind of like client or server kind of model. I like to think send and receive. It's just kind of like a little more colloquially simple. So what we're doing on the Unreal side is we're receiving OSC data. So that's why I need an OSC plugin. If you P5 have an OSC plugin, Unity has an OSC plugin. If you are curious if you can use OSC in like a creative coding kind of paradigm, look it up. I'm sure there's a plugin that maybe you have to install or it's already built in. But what we're doing here first is setting up Unreal to receive OSC data. And in some way, I'm going to share this link in the email I usually send out with you all. I have to come back here. There's an explanation of the OSC plugin in the wiki or the documents for Unreal Engine. And they're a little kind of wonkish. But what's nice is if you come down to here, there's sending an OSC message and binding an event to all messages, which is basically having an event that whenever it receives a message, it does something. So this is our receive. And I can actually copy this node graph, Control C, and then back in here, I can say Control V. Oop. And some of my objects got stuck in this comment box. And I'm just trying to get everything out of the way, because I'm going to walk through and explain all of this. So, let's see here. What do we have? The very beginning of this is something called, and all these things you could create on your own. Create OSC Server. You can see right there. It's doing that for us. So what do we need? OSC is kind of, like I said, it's a send and receive. What we need to do is we need to set an IP address of where we're receiving from. Now, an IP address, if you ever set up your home internet, you know, like you might see that like it's like 192.168.1.68. That's a very common one. Like I'm not gonna try and fake it through this. Like I don't know enough about the internet to know exactly what an IP address is, but it is kind of an address of like you have a network. I think that's like the 192.168, the first two numbers. The one is like a subnet, domain mask or something. And then the last number is like a specific, like if you had 5 iPhones, they would each have a different thing if they were connected to that network. They would have a known unique ID kind of number. And then each IP address has a port, or it has multiple ports, it has lots of ports, but you need to like target a specific port. And most often people in the creative coding community use 8000. What does this IP address needs to be? Well, it needs to be the IP address of whatever this computer is. Now, I'm on Windows, so I could go to, I think, command prompt and type in ipconfig. And under here, my wireless adapter, my IP4 address, 192.168.0.169, I could copy paste that. Now, that's what you would want to do if you were sending stuff from if you had like 2 different computers and you wanted to send it over a Wi-Fi network, this is what you would need. Anytime you're trying to send something on your own computer, like I'm not actually sending things over a network. I have Macs on this computer and I have Unreal on this computer. You can say like localhost. Basically, you're saying like I'm sending to the same place that I'm already in, and you can say 127.0.0. Oop, I need to have this selected. 127.0.0.1. If you've ever seen that before, that's basically just saying like this computer, like just send to the IP address of the place I currently am. So this is saying I'm going to receive it on this internal IP address. I'm listening at port 8000, and I want to make sure that start listening is enabled. Now, what this does is you can see that this bind event to on OSC message received. If I wanted to make that on my own, I'd drag out after it creates it the return value bind event. And what that does is it gives you this, and you can drag off of here and say add custom event, and you can name it whatever you want. But every time an OSC message is received from somewhere, it's going to trigger an event out of this and also give you the message and some other information as well. It's already done that for us with this one called on message received. And what it's going to do is it's going to parse it. It's going to break it down. It's going to get the OSC message at address, which is the first element of a list of data. It's going to convert that to a string, it's going to get the message at an index, and we'll talk about that. I'm going to show you how to format these messages in a bit. And then it's doing some appending where like it'll print it as a string that shows you the address and the value. So what do we take from that? I'll tell you what I take from it. There's a message address. So if I sent something to IP address 127.0.0.1 at port 8000, that message should be structured with an address and a message that's an integer that's at a certain index in the message, which in this case is 0. So let's bring Max into play here just to show you how to structure this. So in Max, again, now I'm sending from Max to Unreal, which I know is set up to receive it. I can say, this is an object, UDP send messages over a network. UDP is like another data protocol that works with OSC. This is a Mac specific thing, but imagine basically it's saying OSC send, because that is essentially what it's saying. I have to give it an argument of what IP address I'm sending to and what port it's listening at. Now I'm going to make a message, which in Max is just kind of a way to write a string. The convention usually is to use a backslash for the address. This is going to be the first element of our string. So I could say, I'm not even sure yet, but where am I going to? Virtual character. I'll do this kind of inverted camel case. So that's our address that we'll pick up. And then it said I was listening for an integer, so I'm going to go 6. Hook that up, and if I lock it, it'll send that. And then coming back to Unreal Engine here for a second. Again, there's nothing, I need to create this OSC server, so my event begin play. I'm actually going to hook up over here because like when the game starts, I want it to create that, find the event, and then start parsing it. So hit compile, hit play. And it looks like it's not working. So I must have done something incorrect. So let's take a look here and just deconstruct. 127.0.0.1 print string, and you know, like I'm wondering if maybe I should just, for the sake of a safety, I'm gonna actually not do the 127 and just use the actual IP address. And this will be different for everybody. And this is not working, so I might end up pausing this video. I might trim it a little bit, but I'm just going to leave you all online here while I try and see if I can figure this out. I didn't test this one as much before, so let's see what's going on. Talking through, everything's the same there. Message address, convert it to a string. Get the integer at index 0. This is the address here, and this is the value of the integer right here. Print to screen. Should all be working. I'm going to try something that I will explain in a minute if it works. Adding an event tick and hooking that up here. Alright, welcome back. I figured out the issue. It was much simpler than I thought, and hopefully this doesn't throw people off too much. All that had happened was, remember I duplicated my virtual character keyboard and was working on the OSC. It was still the virtual character keyboard that was in the game engine. So there was like nothing in the level actually that was running our code. So all I did was I deleted the keyboard and put our other virtual character in here. You can see now with the OSC. And I also realized the 127.0.0.1 works. So that was exactly what we needed. Just to say, is there anything different here? No, I got it all set up. Event begin play, start listening, parse out the message. So I can hit play. Now when I click on this, you can see address virtual character value 6. And I could change this value for... So this isn't that, we're printing something. All we need to do now is route these values to the right place and trigger certain things happening. So let's close this and let's go back and let's bring these into the fold here. Oop. So I have my morph targets. So I'm going to get rid of these. And what I need to think about is I need to use my address to target where I want a value to go and then set that value. So I am actually, let's see here, let's think about this a little. I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'm going to steal that. I don't need the print string. Can I get rid of, there we go. So I have my convert OSC address to string. I am going to make a equals and a branch, which is basically our true false kind of thing. So if the address equals virtual character like it is over here, / virtual character. If that's true, then I want to say get OSC message string at index. And I have to pull off of here. Looks like it's already got that set up for us right here. I can get rid of this, tidying it up. So now the first message after the address is going to be a string. And I can use that to kind of like target things. So I could say virtual character happy. And one thing you can do in Unreal that I use a lot is it's a string switch on string. And I can go add a pin, and these pin names here, I can say happy, sad, or angry, talk. And see how what I'm doing is I'm saying get the message string at the index of the thing here. So just to kind of set this up a little too, I could add in the one and say sad or angry. This is the first message at the index. And once it's basically using this as a check of like a flowchart of where it's supposed to go. So I can go over here and say that this is going to trigger happy, this is going to trigger angry, this is going to trigger talk. Now I need to add one more message into our OSC string, and that's our value. So I can come back here, and I'm going to do something that may not make a lot of sense if you're not doing Max, but a $1, $1, and I'm going to make a float box. And all that's essentially, this is just like Max code for dynamic value. Whatever it receives in this inlet, it'll put right here. This is our second element of our message, and it's this float. So I can update this in real time. We'll come back to that. But from over here, I'm going to say get OSC message. Oh, no, actually, I'm going to make a new one. Get OSC message float at index. And now the index is 1 because we're going, the address is the first thing, but then when the message starts, it's a 0 is the first index, 1 is the second index. Again, I've got to get my message here. And what I can say is, actually a better way to do this will be to store this, promote it as a variable, and say OSC string. Say get OSC string. And we'll feed the value into all 3 of these. And that it's kind of like counterintuitive at first, because it's like, well, wouldn't all 3 of them update? Well, it's only going to update if any of these arrows are triggered. So what I mean to say with that is, all 3 have the possibility to receive, but they'll only update again based on the OSC string that we set up here. And we can clean this up even a little bit more, because I'm getting the string here, getting the float, setting the switch on string based on the float we've stored in the variable and then the value. I could make this like a variable too if I wanted and hook it up just so it'd be a little cleaner. But if I hit compile and if I go back over here, you can see now I have like this numerical control and it can get kind of, why did I break it? Oh, it's just a maximum. I still have, do I have my keyboard controls? Oh yeah, I still have it set up. This is getting really disturbing, but kind of fun. But I could type in like an actual value rather than just 0 to 1. And again, I could like even get like a slider or something on this if I wanted. And then we just have to make one more for talk. And this is one where I could get like a bang. There's something called a toggle edge. And trigger 1. Ooh. Oh, did I get this wrong? Maybe I just need to make it a float. Maybe not. Let me check our code here. I'm just trying to come up with a better like talking button and doing some stupid Mac stuff. But basically when it clicks and turns off, I guess I just need an actual toggle. Did I get the right message on here? Talk, jaw open. Anyway, I mean, you get this. I could always just grab another float. Oh, it doesn't like it. Maybe I have to reset it here. I'll hit play. Saw it like go crazy there for a second. Now I feel like I almost broke it. It is not listening to anything I'm doing. Well, this is all breaking a little bit. I apologize. We get it working again. There we go. So it's got that. There's my open. I think sometimes when you send values that are way outside the range of a morph target, it can kind of cause all of them to shut down a little bit. The one thing there's the talk right there. One thing I wanted to kind of show you that Max can do that starts to get a little bit more fun is I can bring in an easy ADC. And this is basically, there's another object called a meter. This is a quick Max way of just hooking up, having the microphone talk. And I think I need to come in here and say options, audio status, on input device, same thing I'm using here. And now you can see me talking. And the reason I want to do this is because I can get a numerical value out of here. Check, check, check. And it's a little bit, it's having a little trouble there, and it's like really breaking the face of this character. So maybe I can scale this a little bit. Did I break it again? looks like I did. So I'll hit stop here. And you know, sometimes something that happens is I've noticed these create OSC servers kind of like can break a little. So you can always say add event tick or just event tick. And that might be what the problem is. It's like a little bug I've noticed. Check, check. Hey, so now that I'm talking, let me maybe get a little bit closer in there. Check, check. Yeah, there's a little bit of like a, you know, I'm puppeting the character by talking with the mouth moving in unison with it. So this is like an animation kind of like trick you could use. It's not an iPhone like a facial animation, but you start to get the idea. Yeah, so that's kind of like the point of OSC. I'm sorry I bungled that one a little bit. It's not as clean as I would normally make one. But I think it just like to give you a sense of how you could start to play with all this stuff a little bit more. And the last video we'll have is looking at how we can use our iPhone animations.